Again, my name is Adam Blackwell, the Vice President International at Development Services Group, and on behalf of the team at the Global Terrorism Trends and Analysis Center, I'll be moderating this session titled Spotlight on Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan, better known as the TTP, Ideology and Significance, featuring Naveen Khan. Naveen is joining us from Islamabad, where I understand it's 8 p.m. So thank you, Naveen, for staying with us this evening. This is a continuation of a series of talks by eminent people in the field of terrorism. The views expressed are those of the presenter. Naveen Khan is a distinguished research fellow at the Center for Intelligence and Security Studies, situated within the University of Akron in Ohio, and with a keen focus on global security dynamics, particularly in the volatile regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Naveen brings a wealth of experience and insight to her research. Her analysis and scholarly contributions have earned her the role of columnist for the GTSC's Homeland Security Today, where she disseminates her perspectives on contemporary security challenges and policy implications. Naveen's academic journey encompasses a Master's of Science degree in Sociology from the London School of Economics, and her specialization in Afghanistan-Pakistan security affairs reflects a deep-seated commitment to unraveling the intricacies of regional geopolitical terrorism and conflict resolution. Naveen will speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have about another 20 minutes for discussion. Please use the Q&A function in Zoom and prepare your questions as the speaker is speaking. So Naveen, over to you.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. So before talking about the significance of the TTP, I would talk about their ideology. This ideology partly originated from the Mughal Empire of South Asia. It was an early modern era empire, and one of its last kings, called Aurangzeb, had theocratic tendencies. He wanted to theocratize India, and he empowered clerics. He had a number of clerics in his court, and he actually got his elder brother, Dara Shikoh, executed on apostasy charges. One of the clerics in his court was called Shah Abdul Rahim. His son Shah Waliullah Dehelvi inherited this tendency of studying of the original Islamic sources and de-emphasizing the role of the rational sciences from his father Shah Abdul Rahim. When Waliullah Dehelvi traveled to Saudi Arabia for further studies, he got further radicalized because there he got exposed to Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas. Ibn Taymiyyah is the progenitor of political Islam. He is heavily quoted and revered by the modern Islamist militant groups today. Although he was from the medieval era, but he's still remembered. So having been exposed to Ibn Taymiyyah's ideas, Shah Waliullah Dehelvi became more radicalized, and when he returned to India, it was the British that were ruling India by then. He believed that Muslim political decay in India, which means the loss of their leadership, political leadership, was actually the result of religious decline. In simple words, that means that he believed that Islam had gotten contaminated with local Hinduism, Hindu philosophies and their religious practices. So he sought to purify Islam by literally returning to its roots the way it was practiced in the 7th century. He began to shape a clerical movement that issued legal decrees on religious issues called fatawa. It's the plural of fatwa. And 3 of his spiritual descendants here now begin to play an important role. They went on to form an Islamist mini-state for this puritanical mission of purifying Islam. And subsequently, this nascent empire was crushed by the British, who were then ruling India. One of these spiritual descendants of Shah Waliullah Dehelvi realized that the only way to confront the British was to do so educationally. He adopted their educational model, and he had established a madrasa in the North Indian town of Deoband. So please remember this word Deoband, because uh, this Deobandi ideology is what the TTP follows today. This madrasa became a network, the center of a nationwide madrasa network. The idea behind establishing this Darul Uloom Deoband, or this main Deobandi madrasa, was it would produce male clerics who would not only lead a religious revival but also provide political leadership to the Muslims of India. So this madrasa became the parent institution for all the Deobandi madrasas in Afghanistan, Pakistan today, where the Afghan Taliban and the TTP leaders have studied. For example, the Haqqaniya Madrasa in Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan produced the top Taliban leadership. This madrasa was established by an alumnus and an ex-teacher of the main Darul Uloom Deoband in India. So this is where the name Deoband comes from. And all of these madrasas, including the original Deoband Darul Uloom in India, they remain the locuses of an austere, medieval, and puritanical brand of Islam, where there are neither any females nor is there any variation among the appearances of males. So it's very austere, all of that. Typical youthful hobbies like flying kites, watching movies, listening even to devotional music, this kind of activities are not present. Women's equal rights, wearing of neckties by men, even that is considered wrong in one degree or the other. Darul Uloom's principle also supports the Taliban segregation policy of keeping men and women separate. So we can relate all this to the present day Taliban ideology of instituting bans, social bans. Here we can see that the focus is on as during Shah Waliullah Dehlvi's era, the focus remains on purging Islam of the influences of the infidel other. So this ideology is practiced by the TTP today without any doubt. And also there is this factor that because Saudi funding has also been behind the funding of these Deobandi madrasas during the 1980s anti-Soviet war, it's natural that their religious police model, which has been instituting bans on social activities, was adopted by the Taliban, and subsequently the TTP also envisages to establish that kind of a puritanical state where activities will be banned that are considered un-Islamic. Until now, I've talked about the Deobandi origins and how this philosophy, Deobandi philosophy, is focused on banning certain activities. Now I will talk more generally about this madrasa ideology that, in other words, is the Islamist militant ideology as well. More generally, not just confined to Deobandi madrasas. So a renowned Pakistani theologian, Javed Ahmad Ghamidi, who is now running an institute in Texas, US, he, in one of his interviews, identified 4 root causes of religiously motivated violent extremism, or 4 underpinnings of the TTP's ideology, we can say. According to him, these 4 tenets are taught by all the madrasas. These tenets also emanate from Islamic movements, and they are also preached by mullahs. So the first tenet of this ideology is polytheism, infidelity, and apostasy are all punishable by death. And the group on a purification mission itself has the right to enforce this punishment. So we can relate this with the TTP. Ultimately, that is what they could do if they assume power. Second tenet of this ideology is non-Muslims are born only to be subjugated. Every non-Muslim government is considered illegitimate because it is not run according to Islamic laws or what they consider Islamic. Only true Muslims have the right to establish a legitimate rule. Even if there is a Muslim-run government, but it is not run according to the Sharia law, it must be overthrown. Whether the rulers are Muslim or non-Muslim, that government is going to be overthrown because it is an illegitimate government. according to this ideology. The third tenet of this ideology that the TTP and all other groups believe in is all Muslims worldwide should be ruled by a single Islamic government called the Caliphate. So we could now think about Daesh or ISIS's caliphate that they established, so-called caliphate. All Muslims worldwide should be ruled by this Islamic government, and the separate Muslim states in the world, they carry no legitimacy. Only the pan-Islamist caliphate will bring true peace and implement the Sharia. None of this is possible in a modern Muslim nation state. The last ideological underpinning for the TTP is the concept of a modern nation state is a form of infidelity, and there is no room in Islam for such a system. It brings corrupting Western influences with it, to purge which is the responsibility of self-appointed violent extremist groups like the TTP. So they have this problem with the concept of a nation state. They are against this concept. Its leniency in matters pertaining to religion also creates space for supposed innovations within Islam. Innovations are disliked in Islam, but for the Wahhabists and for the Deobandis, they are a great point of focus. So this is also one reason why they oppose the concept of a nation state. So now I move on to the TTP's significance. The TTP was formed in 2007 with its leaders having studied in Pakistan's Deobandi madrasas. It's important to see that their flag and their very name, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, they are inspired by the Afghan Talibans because their name is Tehreek-e-Taliban Afghanistan. So the flag and the name are both inspired by theirs. Interestingly, the name of their media wing is Umar Media. That has been named after the first late commander of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Afghanistan, whom we know as Mullah Umar. So Umar Media has been named after him. Mufti Nur Wali Mahsood, he now currently leads the TTP from Afghanistan's Paktika province. A Mufti is a Muslim legal expert who is empowered to give rulings or fatwa, as I said earlier, on religious matters. So people bring up questions to them and to Muftis, and Muftis then give rulings. Qari Amjad Ali, Qari means a Quran reciter. So he is his deputy in Kunar province of Afghanistan, and both of these provinces are adjacent to Pakistan-controlled territory. So this current chief called Mufti Nur Wali Mahsood, he has fought alongside the Afghan Taliban since 1996, 1997, ever since the days of the Northern Alliance, the anti-Taliban Northern Alliance. It shows that he's an old ally. So it makes sense that the Taliban, after assuming power in Afghanistan, released more than 2,300 TTP operatives from prisons, which significantly bolstered the TTP's human resources. One interesting thing is the UN intelligence in 2023 or last year projected the number of TTP's fighters as between 4,000 and 6,000. But when I shared this statistic with a contact of mine from North Waziristan, he told me that 6,000 could be the number of fighters from only one tribal district. Only one tribal district, not the total number, which means the total strength could be much higher. And tribal district, as he said, that this 6,000 could be the number of fighters from one tribal district. That means that, as we all have an idea, this was called, there was this region called federally administered tribal area, which consisted of 7 agencies, or they are now called districts after having been merged into the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So 6,000 could be the number only from one district, not the total, which means it's an understatement to think that the TTP just has this many fighters. In reality, from my study, I've concluded that they are really much more powerful than is assumed usually. So the Afghan sources have suggested that Al-Qaeda are providing training and ideological guidance to the TTP in suicide bomber training camps. Intelligence and explosive training, explosive devices are what the TTP has been acquiring from the Islamic Turkestan Islamic Party, TIP, or ETIM, which focuses on China. So East Turkestan Islamic Movement, intelligence and explosive devices from them, and obviously shelter and operational support from the Afghan Taliban. So they have plenty of supporting groups inside Afghanistan. They also have involvement in activities pertaining to crime. So they could be, from my assessment is that they could be called the new Haqqani network now. There is I would now talk a little bit about the symbiotic relationship between the Afghan Taliban and the TTP. The TTP the Afghan Taliban respects the TTP because they have helped them against coalition forces. They gave sacrifices against the coalition forces. So they view them as a close ally, and an important point here is they never condemn TTP's attacks inside Pakistan. Sirajuddin Haqqani himself said that he would not coerce the TTP to give up their attacks inside Pakistan because they have waged jihad together against the Americans and made sacrifices alongside them. So on the other hand, the TTP considers the Afghan Taliban their role models whose example should be emulated in Pakistan. So like taking over power and then instituting the same system here. Now to the stated objective of the TTP. Their spokesperson, Muhammad Khorasani, he's from Gilgit-Baltistan, which also shows that their recruitment is not just from the Pakhtun areas or Pashtun areas. He announced their immediate objective to gain control of the tribal region, that ex-federally administered tribal areas. I'm talking about that. So for this purpose, they have their fighters stationed in and their training camps. The TTP has their fighters and training camps in a staggering 6 Afghan provinces. 6 provinces are Kunar, Nangarhar, Paktia, Paktika, Khost, and Lugar. All of them are adjacent to Pakistani-controlled territory. Interestingly, it has been reported that the TTP also regularly collected financial aid from the markets of host province. They distributed a leaflet among the people of this province and asked them to contribute financially to the TTP movement. Over the past 20 years, they have executed more than 250 attacks. Pakistani officials said that the violence inside Pakistan has gone up by 60% ever since the Taliban government came to power. Interestingly, the TTP also attacked this city called Miawali, which officially is in Punjab province of Pakistan, but it is basically a Pashtun or Pakhtun territory. So they attacked Miawali to give the message to the military to vacate the city, because ultimately they want to take control of this entire Pakhtunkhwa, and from there they want to extend their rule further. So it's very interesting. They targeted the Pakistan Air Force here in this city, which is originally considered a part of Pakhtunkhwa. Ideology, yes, their ideologies of global jihadism. There is no doubt about that. It's clear from their previous statements. But interestingly, they are, because Pakhtun areas are a natural extension of Afghanistan, the TTP does not recognize the Durand line that divides these Pakhtun areas. So it wants to take over the tribal areas and the rest of Pakhtunkhwa province, and then ultimately expand from there. There is this very important 6-point strategy that the TTP's Amir has been following. It has revolutionized their operations. Those operations that existed before he assumed leadership of the TTP were very different from what they are today, because of this 6-point strategy that the TTP's Amir has enforced. It's very clear that he has a lot of intelligence. He has adapted the strategy according to the requirements of the time. He's clearly very goal-focused, and as we'll see, he has revolutionary qualities, which means that which is very clear from this strategy that I'm about to delineate. which has given him revolutionary results. He executed these effective steps that have made the TTP an umbrella group for foreign fighters. It's very much feared to be um, it's feared to be becoming a strong umbrella group for incoming foreign fighters. So the first point of this strategy was to unite all jihadist commanders or the smaller jihadist outfits into the larger umbrella network of the TTP. Previously, they had been operating autonomously, but now he has amalgamated all of these groups. So until the middle of 2023, it had been reported that more than 24 jihadist commanders, along with their fighters, have been amalgamated. More than 24 jihadist outfits, smaller outfits, have been amalgamated into the TTP. The second strategy was he created a more robust and decentralized organizational network. In doing so, he copied the Afghan Taliban strategy of creating a shadow structure of government that will take over in this wider region whenever an opportunity arose. For this, he appointed governors and deputy governors. In first, he made 12 provinces. Step by step, he increased the number of provinces. He brought them to 12. Then appointed governors and deputy governors for these 12 provinces, and even named the chiefs of intelligence for various regions. So now there are 12 provinces where the TTP is basically ready to assume control whenever an opportunity arises. The third strategy, it's very important that he shunned the path of targeting civilians. Now they are only targeting the military, paramilitary, and police inside Pakistan. So mostly Pakhtunkhwa. And ultimately, it's the ethnic Pakhtuns who are suffering the most, because they are targeting inside Pakistan, but it's easiest for them to target the police, paramilitary, and the military stationed in this area. So ultimately, it's the people of their own ethnicity that are suffering the most. The fourth strategy is to stop targeting non-Muslim minorities such as Hindus, Sikhs, Christians. They have completely stopped targeting members of these communities. The fifth strategy is the TTP declared that they have no agenda outside Pakistan, no external agenda, quote unquote. So this was inspired by some of the points that emerged during the Doha negotiations between the Afghan Taliban and the US. Because the Afghan Taliban said that they will not allow any group to target the US by using Afghan territory. So in the same way, the TTP declared that, okay, we are also not going to launch any US directed attacks. And the last and the sixth point is the TTP also copied this last strategy from the Afghan Taliban, that they will fight the forces, here in this case Pakistani forces, while simultaneously holding peace talks with them. The Afghan Taliban were doing the same, but that was with the US, so fighting and talks at the same time. Now, a few factors that favor the TTP. Pakistan deported or expelled the Afghan refugees, which really favors the TTP. They could even get recruits from there. Pakistan's unilateral fencing of the Durand Line, second thing. Then Pakistan's alleged harboring of Daesh Khorasan or ISIS Khorasan leaders. Obviously, that causes the Taliban to resent the Pakistanis, and that favors the TTP. Also, the Haqqani network's expanding influence in northeastern Afghanistan, that also helps the TTP because they are both allies. And in general, this brotherly Taliban government. Then next, acquisition of weapons left behind by the US forces. And then operational space in Balochistan through allying with separatists. Also, a growth of fellow anti-Pakistan jihadist organizations that have also been inviting recruits. And the last thing is the US considers the TTP as Pakistan's internal matter. They are war weary, they are uninterested, and also they can't afford to get involved during an election year. other than that, the TTP undoubtedly enjoys a lot of support from the Afghan Taliban's foot soldiers, because they feel that if they together defeated a superpower like the US in 20 years, then they can do the same with Pakistan. So it's very clear that they are in a position of strength. Also, there have been TTP attacks against the against Chinese interests and citizens in Pakhtunkhwa provinces. In Pakhtunkhwa province, Chinese BRI project, the Belt and Road Initiative projects, they are being targeted by almost on a weekly basis. They are being targeted by the TTP. But here the problem is Pakistan has no international aid to fight the TTP that wants its share in power. China could back a full-scale operation against the TTP, but that comes with consequences. So it would be a double-edged sword for the Chinese. And America, as we've discussed already, they are not going to fund a full-scale operation against the TTP. So that's the end.
Naveen, thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation. I really like the way you framed it with the, the four elements of the TTP philosophy, and then the 6-point strategy to implement it. I guess one question I have for you, in our data, we're seeing more incidents by the TTP, and perhaps it's because, they are implementing this strategy and have a more robust fighting force. But how many do you think, if you had to guess, how many fighters do you think the TTP have, if it's more than the 4,000 to 6,000 you mentioned? And where's their funding coming from as well?
It could be, I'm doing a little bit of math for this purpose. So as my source from North Waziristan told me that 4,000 to 6,000 could be the number only from one tribal district. So we know that there are 7 tribal districts. So when we multiply 4,000 with 4,000 by 7, that becomes 28,000. So that's a conservative estimate.
So
let's say 30,000.
So let's say 30,000. So that's a fairly significant force to arm and feed and provide for. So where does the funding come from?
Where does the funding come from?
How do they maintain this force?
So I've done some, I've interviewed people from Waziristan, and what I've been told is, as far as the, you can say, as far as the daily boarding, lodging, and food expenses are concerned, there is plenty of space in the mountains to live. So these people are still present there in the mountains of North and South Waziristan. And when we talk about the food expenses, I've been told that they come down to, they descend at night towards villages, and they just knock at any door and they ask for food. And the locals are forced to cook even in odd hours of the night, and they provide them food, because otherwise there is the risk of death. So this thing, and other than that, they have plenty of sources for funding their operations. First source, as I mentioned even in my presentation, they collected donations from the markets of host province for their operations. Then they have this Afghan Taliban brotherly government that also can help them anytime if it's possible for them. And then they're also involved in, as I said, they are the new Haqqani network, they could be called that. So that means they're also involved in criminal activities, extortion, and this smuggling of items, that kind of stuff. They have their own, you can say they have this this illegal taxation, that kind of things, which could be considered extortion, that kind of sources for money. So there are plenty of sources. Obviously it will require a separate research in itself.
We have a couple of questions from our group here, and I remind everybody, please put any questions in the Q&A function in Zoom. So the first one is, with the increasing TTP attacks, especially in the KP region, it seems that the casualties are heavier on the security forces side, which is what you mentioned in your presentation. So how much control does the TTP have in that area? And does the Pakistan government have the capability to successfully combat their advances and attacks?
So the TTP are obviously trying their best to assume control of areas, and they would, logically, they would begin from the tribal areas. One of their conditions during their negotiations with the Pakistanis was that they wanted a Pakistani military to leave the area, these tribal areas, and because they want to create an so-called Islamic Emirate of Waziristan, and then take control of all the tribal areas. So right now the military is there because the talks failed and the military didn't vacate the area. So definitely they haven't succeeded in getting control of the area, but from time to time there are attacks. They try to show the Pakistani military as the weaker side, to bring down their morale and to try and seize an opportunity to get hold of an opportunity to get control of an area. But they haven't been successful yet. It's an ongoing war.
Okay. You mentioned in your presentation how the Saudis have funded the Deobandi madrasas in the 80s. Is it still an issue in the region? And how influential are the Wahhabis on the Deobandi madrasas?
I didn't understand the last part.
I think we're having a bit of audio issues. I am at any rate. Is it still an issue of the Saudis investing in the Deobandi madrasas in the region? And how influential is Wahhabism on the Deobandi madrasas?
So the Deobandis are themselves very puritanical. The ideology has been planted once, and it's very powerful. What I have heard, according to my information, the Saudis aren't funding this ideology anymore. Because as we know, the Prince Mohammed bin Salman has Vision 2030 for Saudi Arabia, and he's trying to secularize Saudi Arabia itself. And the UAE also has stopped funding these madrasas that the Arab countries previously saw as export of their influence. At least with Saudi Arabia, it's not the case right now, but the ideology is there, it's very strong. And all of these groups, Wahhabists, Deobandis, Salafists, all of them, they are as robust and as alive as they have ever been.
Yeah, the last question, and then we will let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. If the TTP are able to gain control of the KP region, would it be seen as an extension of the Afghan Taliban's territory, or would they?
Okay, so you can say yes. It would be like, we can take the example of Iran. So there is this spiritual commander who would be stationed in Kandahar, right? The ways that Ali Khamenei there is the spiritual commander of the Iranian Republic. So here it would be under his so-called spiritual guidance or spiritual leadership. But the TTP definitely, because they are native to these areas of Khyber, of Pakhtunkhwa, they are native, so they would be running all of these affairs and administrative roles would be assumed by them, but definitely under the leadership, under the spiritual guidance of Afghan Taliban.
Excellent. Well, Naveen, we are going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. On behalf of all of us here at the GTAC, I'd like to thank you for an excellent presentation. You covered a lot of territory and a lot of detailed information. Remind everybody we have recorded this, so it will be on our website very soon if you would like to listen to it again. And Naveen, again, once again, thank you very much for your participation, and all of those who are listening in. Stay tuned until the next speaker series. So
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much for
much.
having.
Thank you.
Thank you.